and hoping, told them I will show, and they don't need to worry about me. But the quiet always comes first, then the devil brings the lightning and the thunder. Take a shot, come see what you made of. 'Cause fired up 'cause you know, 'cause I can't, won't stop, won't let go. No surrender, even on my knees, 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. And I'm fired up 'cause you know, and I can't, won't stop, won't let go. No surrender, even on my knees, 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. Shut down, turning all the lights up, calling me a writer. Thought you got the best of me, thought you had me nailed down, but you'll never get the keys or the crown. 'Cause there's something that you don't know about, something you ain't heard about, never really got without me. I'ma fight until the bell sounds, and you don't wanna get me in the ring now. So take a shot, come see what you made of. 'Cause I'm fired up 'cause you know, 'cause I can't, won't stop, won't let go. No surrender, even on my knees, 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. And I'm fired up 'cause you know, and I can't, won't stop, won't let go. No surrender, even on my knees, 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. So come to me now. Nowhere, 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 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. Nowhere, 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 nowhere. Fired up 'cause you know, 'cause I can't, won't stop, won't let go. No surrender, even on my knees, 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. And I'm fired up 'cause you know, and I can't, won't stop, won't let go. No surrender, even on my knees, 'cause there's nowhere but up for me. 'Cause there's nowhere but up for me. 'Cause there's nowhere but up for me. I'm no immortal, but my fire will never die. They take me for a fool, I'm taken for a ride. The more my feet are battered, the more I'm taken down. The more they think I'm innocent, I'm fighting from the ground. 'Cause I can take this pain, it's changing me. I will rise up to the moment, and I won't stay the same. There's my decree. Burning like a flame, I'm coming to train. I'm coming your way, your way. Thunder with the rain, I'm flooding the game. Start running away, away. Battle through the pain, transforming the game. I'm storming your way, your way. And I 'Cause I can take this pain, it's changing me. I will rise up to the moment and I won't stay the same. That's my decree. Burning like a flame, I'm coming a train, I'm coming your way. Thunder with the rain, I'm flooding again, start running away. Battle through the pain, transforming again, I'm storming your way. And I won't stay the same as my decree.
40 contenders. 7 rounds. The road to the Coke Series ends here.
I cannot be defeated. I can take off, I don't need a reason. Anyone that see me sweating, bleeding, I'm about to take off, can't believe it, I believe it. I cannot be stopped, no, no. I cannot be stopped, no, no. I cannot be stopped, no, no. I cannot be stopped, no, no.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to iRacing's coverage of the 6th race of the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, live from iRacing's virtual Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. James Pike here alongside Blake McCandless and Taylor Burris. And Blake, I'll come to you first. If ever there were a driver's track and maybe a better litmus test of just how much skill you have in not just the Contender Series, but maybe all of the oval side of iRacing, I struggle to think of facilities better than this one to allow drivers a chance to prove their case.
Well, James, I think the one question that this series poses is who is ready to go to the Coke Series next season. And there are a lot of tracks that are challenging, but I think if you can tame Darlington, if you can drive Darlington against some of the best sim racers in the world, then yes, you do deserve to be in the Coke Series. So very glad it's on the schedule, and looking forward to how things shape up tonight with the drivers who are looking to be in a pretty good spot and those who are looking to make up points with just a couple races left.
And Taylor, if you're not in a good spot, it's just about Hail Mary time at this point. We've seen stranger things happen, but if you're on the outside and you're, I would say, anywhere in the ballpark of 15 to 20 points out, you really need to leave Darlington having had a good run tonight. Otherwise, it's hard to see too many paths to find a way into the Coke Series for anyone that far back coming into Texas next week.
It pretty much is for all those drivers who are looking to try to get one of those coveted spots. It's win and you're in. Pretty much get time for these drivers. They have to go up there and challenge for the race win. Try a different strategy call in order to see what they can do. It's no more running towards the back and working your way up through the field. It's no more maybe just getting a top 15 or a top 20 or even a top 10 possibly, the chance for you to make it in. It is pretty much top 5 and win if you want to have your return or even make your rookie debut in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series.
Let's see where we've been in the Contender Series up to this point. We started back on November 1st at Phoenix Raceway. We then went to Homestead, Miami, Auto Club, and Nashville. All those races won by Joey Brown. Dover was last week with Colin Keister going to Victory Lane. Darlington this week, Texas Motor Speedway next week in the final competitive eNASCAR race for 2022, right before Christmas to round out the season. Here are the standings. Blake McCann lists some names that we've seen in the Coke Series before in the top 20, but also some new names that look like they have a pretty good shot of advancing into the Coke Series for 2023 and maybe shuffling up the established order a little bit.
Certainly so, James. You look at this top 6, and you would say that they're locked in to be eligible to be able to make the Coke Series next season, and some new names would be included in that. Joey Lopez Jr., Wyatt Tinsley would be rookies in the series. Tucker Minter's in a very good spot tonight. But what we're going to be watching is on that right-hand side of the screen, and even on our next page over, the Colin Bowdens, Malik Ray, Kevin King, Ryan Doucette, those drivers that are right around that cut line that have had pretty good seasons. They also have had a race that is worthy of a drop, so a bad race will hurt them quite significantly. That's where a lot of our attention is going to be these next couple of races, but particularly tonight, who around that 10th place spot is going to be able to nearly lock themselves into the top 20 in points by the time we get to Texas next week.
Here are all the drivers who entered this evening a little bit nervous, Taylor. This is the flip side of the cutoff line. These are the drivers that still have work to do if they want to find themselves in the Coke Series for next season.
It certainly is. And look at some of the names of drivers who were in this past season in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Briar LaPrade, who was a rookie this year. You also got, of course, 4-time champion Ray Alfala, 38 points back trying to work his way through. How about one of the eNASCAR college drivers who had such a dominant run earlier in the year, Daniel Buttafuoco? He's outside looking in 28th spot. You also had a couple of other heavy hitters like Seth DeMerchant, Blaze Crawford, who are now just on the outside looking in by around under 10 to 15 points. So this is go time for them where they have no choice but to go out there and try to win this race in order for them to move on.
I think that little bit, especially from Buttafuoco and Navarro on that group, will be very intriguing next 2 weeks to figure out the fight for who is eligible for the Coke Series next season. Let's take a closer look at Darlington Raceway. Blake McCandless, you've got experience here as a driver of the Contender Series, so I will turn it to you to let you tell everyone all about this famous grand old facility.
It's so much fun to drive around, James, and again, it has this unique egg shape that has put on fantastic racing in this series in the past. You think about the Coke Series, had a pretty thrilling finish as well in the playoffs this past year, but it is a track that is very hard to get around in turns 1 and 2. You're getting all the way up against the outside wall where all the speed, all the grip is, and more recently here, James, as this track has continued to wither away, when you look at the opposite end of the racetrack in turns 3 and 4, there's a lot available for these drivers. It's not just going to be the top of the racetrack. You'll see drivers kind of work their way down down to the bottom with a little bit of that banking and the grip that this track has continued to lose. It opens things up on that end of the racetrack, but you have to get those passes done on this long front straightaway because you do not want to go side by side at a 1 and 2, at least not a lot.
Drivers shuffled their lineup. I've seen folks go from the bottom, float up high in the middle, and then come back down. They run all over the place in 1 and 2. It's a little bit more standard in 3 and 4, but it's a tighter radius there, Taylor. There's less room to work with, and it can be trickier to navigate that portion of the racetrack.
And that's what makes Darlington so unique of just trying to negotiate this. This track here is going to test the limits of every driver. Even though a lot of us have raced on this circuit, when there's so much at stake here, as we watch in with qualifying with Jordi Lopez Jr., one of those drivers who is looking to be guaranteed to compete, he is right there trying to work his way through.
Here's a look at Jordi Lopez Jr. racing for Altus Esports and carrying the banner for them in this Contender Series season, having a wonderful campaign, top 5 in points. Also a reminder that if you've not had the chance to take advantage of it, you can head to iRacing.com/holiday-sale. So again, 25% off of account renewals of 12 and 24 months through December 16th. So you've got a few more days to take advantage of that sign. And if you're getting a new membership, you can buy that for 50% off now through January 8th at the iRacing.com/holiday-sale to pick up your subscription of iRacing today. Cody Bias coming to a stop right at the end of his qualifying lap as some of these final drivers get the opportunity to take time. We get a good look down the back straightaway at some of the fastest people in the series and folks that have plenty of experience. Alan Bose on the racetrack now. Blake McCandless, he a driver looking to return to the Coke Series for next season.
And he's done a pretty good job of his O's. He may attack the wall there off of turn 4. You can see a little bit of smoke right there. So not a time that I'm sure he's going to be thrilled with. But Allen, he has a win. He's executed very well. He's 10th right now on the board in qualifying. Again, these drivers continuing to make their times up to the last second. But he's done a tremendous job so far. He is well on his way to claiming eligibility into next year's Cook season with his recent finishes in this series.
Qualifying has wrapped up. It is time to head to the starting grid and tell you where your favorite driver will begin this evening. How about Cody Bias for Dead Zone Racing, fast time of 28.868 seconds to take the top spot over Vicente Salas, who was victorious in the season opener at Phoenix back in November. And then Altus Esports locking down the next 4 positions. Tucker Minter and Ryan Doucette starting 3rd and 4th. And Blake McCandless and Seth the Merchant and Michael Cozy Jr. starting 5th and 6th.
And you can look at all those Logitech Altus Esports cars. And next up, we have Caden Honeycutt and Casey Tucker. Going to be very interesting as he is 5 points beneath that cut line coming in. Going to be helped right now with an 8th place starting spot. You have Daniel Falkingham, and 9th, 10th is Alan Bose, who we were just looking in at. 2-time winner in this series, Joey Brown will start 11th, and Colin Keister, Taylor, will round out your top 12.
We then got Parker White and Derek Justice over there with North Force Racing, along with Brandon McKissick from Legacy Esports and Timmy Holmes rounding out in row number 8, rounding in the 17th and 18th position. Tyler Gary and Brendan Collier from Elliott Sadler Esports.
19th and 20th on the grid, Ray Alfala and Derek Bordeaux for Legacy Esports and Dead Zone Racing, respectively. Boyd Hogan starts 21st alongside North Force Racing. Wyatt Tinsley, who is likely going to be eligible for the Coke Series next season, had a fantastic campaign, has Wyatt. Colin Bowden and Andrew Navarro starting in 23rd and 24th.
25th goes to Blade Witt. James Winsell will start in the 26th position. Jordi Lopez Jr. in a good points position, but didn't qualify so well. He's back here in 27th. Briar LaPrade going to have to climb up from 28th. Kevin King, after a speeding penalty, looking to recover after last week. He'll start 29th. Daniel Buttafuoco will round out your top 30.
Going into the row 16, 31st is Taylor Hurst and Malik Ray in 32nd, with Express Esports racing Daniel Smallwood and Brian Mercurio of Legacy in row 17. Rounding out in row 18 is Jonathan Delaney and Christopher Pfeffer.
Your final drivers on the starting grid: Dylan Alt for Elliott Sadler Esports, Blaze Crawford also for ESC, and Altus Esports Christopher Hill starting in the 39th position. The field rolling past some of our cameras here at the virtual Darlington Raceway as we get set to bring you the race analysis and get you informed of what's on tap and what will be forthcoming. Blake McCandless in this race, but a solid 120 laps that these drivers will have to compete this evening.
Well, and it's going to be a lot different than what we had here last year, James, where the race was a little bit longer, and pretty much from the drop of the green flag, you were either set on one of two strategies, whether you were going to try to one-stop this race or two-stop it. It is much more straightforward this time around. You're going to have to pretty much stop once in this race. Maybe we could see a two-stopper, but I doubt that you're going to split this into 3 40-lap runs, so much more straightforward. Going to be raw speed that determines the winner tonight.
Pace car pulls down onto pit road. Cody Bias getting set to go as you see the race analysis on your screen there momentarily. But Bias waiting for his opportunity to get on the gas pedal, goes right at the top of the restart zone. And we are underway with the penultimate race of 2022 in the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series for the virtual Darlington Raceway. Already single file.
Oh, trouble in turn 3. Tyler Gary got hit in the back and somehow stayed out of the wall. They were 3 wide, and he got a little bit of a check there into turn 3 from Derek Bordeaux. Somehow no caution, but a number of drivers behind this 18th position with a little bit of damage in that one.
So that will shake up things right around the 20th spot or so. I caught that just out of the corner of my eye as you started to talk about it, Blake McCandless, and a very, very scary moment for a lot of drivers in the middle of the pack. You get a good look at Tyler Gary's machine, just holding off Malik Ray, James Wenzel, Jordy Lopez Jr., all right there in position trying to strike. I wonder in particular if we'll see Wenzel and Lopez work together, given that Lopez has just about done everything that he needs to do in order to make the Coke Series for next season. He will almost certainly end the season top 20 in points. Will we see him drop back and maybe help out the Wenzels, the Doucette, some of the other drivers on his team, Taylor Burris, that aren't in as comfortable a position as Jordy is?
Well, that's the big question right there. I mean, we're going to probably see Lopez make some adjustments to see if he can help his teammate in any way possible. But, of course, you also have to realize it's also depending on how well the drivers who are driving these race cars are best able to handle it and during certain points of the run. Maybe right now these drivers who have worked hard with these setups made adjustments to be better in the longer runs of the race, depending on their strategy calls. So it's still quite a bit to tell early on, but we could see Lopez trying to work and help them tow their way up through the field to gain some much valuable points.
Anybody screaming for ice cream with a good look at Derek Justice Machine, the man from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, wheeling in this way and I guess scooping out the competition. We'll just roll on the bad puns already. I'll make sure to get kicked off in about maybe 3 seconds or so. But Derek Justice struggled in the Coke Series this year. She's right on board with Dylan Alt, but managed to make it and is currently in the top 20, 14th in points as we ride on board with Dylan Alt, 9th in points out of Sacramento, California. Also a driver out of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. And I feel like we've seen that before, Blake, perhaps?
We had. This was a paint scheme that was Elliott Sadler's last Xfinity start that you could see on the left-hand side of your screen. And, of course, on the right-hand side, Dylan Alt wheeling it virtually. Unfortunately, back here in the 35th position right now. But we know Darlington, James, it's a track where we often see a lot of these throwback paint schemes make their way out onto the track. And whether it's racing for the boss man or even some drivers that get pretty creative. I know Parker White right now has an American Airlines throwback livery that used to adorn those airplanes, so there's a lot of creativity and some nods to their bosses, some nods to their own days in sim racing long ago, and it's pretty neat to see some of the schemes that these drivers come up with.
Yeah, a few throwback schemes. This, of course, home of the official throwback weekend of NASCAR, but they always do a great job with it, Darlington Raceway. This is Tyler Gary that you see on screen. Let's take a look at what happened to him on the opening lap. If you didn't get the chance to see what Blake McCandless was talking about, it was a big move from Ray Alfalla, who went down to the inside, and Gary just sort of got pinched in between the three. And I think the move there from Alfalla, Taylor, that's pretty simply when you're not in a good position in points, you recognize that you have to go from the very drop of the green flag. And given that Alfalla enters tonight 38 points out of the cutoff line, 33rd in the
Trouble on the
standings.
front straightaway right here. One car around. Brendan Collier loops it on across the start-finish line. Keeps it going, but a close call. But that was a little bit of chaos right there. One car did turn down on him.
Color did go around on the front straightaway. We stayed green flag racing. It was a single car incident that was in the apron, as you get a good look at another quasi throwback machine for Parker White, representing the old colors of American Airlines before their merger with US Airways back in the mid 2000s. But yeah, a lot of throwback schemes sort of hiding throughout the field. This, of course, home to the official throwback weekend of NASCAR, put on by the team that my man Kerry Tharp and all of his people at Darlington Raceway have a very, very strong tradition and always do a great job with Throwback Weekend when it comes to May. Battles here, middle of the pack, right around 12th, 13th, 14th that you're seeing. This is everybody right on the back end of the top 10 as White tries to take away a spot from Dead Zone's Alan Bowes. But at this stage, lots of drivers, single file, just trying to manage tires, trying to manage their cars. This is a track that is very difficult because the racing groove is so narrow, and relative to a lot of other tracks, there's just no margin for error given how fast you can be. You end these straightaways somewhere in the ballpark of 160, 165 miles an hour if you're pushing it. And you think of this place compared to, say, maybe Auto Club Speedway in Southern California that we saw earlier on the schedule, where you've got 4 or 5 or 6 grooves. Here, you're lucky to have 2.5 at best. And so that makes it very difficult for the drivers. You almost adopt a sort of road course strategy here, in the sense that you find a way to race the track almost as much as you do the pack. As we look on board with Houston, Texas's Joey Brown, who managed to do most of the work he needed to do by virtue of his 3 wins earlier in the Contender Series season, Taylor Burris.
Yeah, Joey has done a phenomenal job this season, really showcased a lot of speed, a lot of talent, and of course that brand new team that brings on a lot of former talent to the eNASCAR Coke Series and some young up-and-coming talent. Joey Brown, of course, competed back in the early years of the eNASCAR Series, looking to see if he can make a return and have a shot competing in this series in 2023, but he is definitely trying to wheel and hold on here, currently sitting in the 8th spot, trying to hold and try to get around the 99 of Michael Cozy Jr.
Brown has been very, very, I guess calm is the right word here. It doesn't necessarily look it, because we come into his onboard shot every week and you see a certain level of concentration on his face. But compared to a lot of other drivers in this series, he's got maybe the most stress-free run to close out the season because of the victories that he picked up in the middle of this Contender Series season. So lots of work that needed to be done, taken care of early, and it put him in a great position, Blake, to where it's not that the rest of the season doesn't matter per se, because as we talked about last week at Dover, you are trying to impress potential team owners and trying to essentially campaign for yourself and make the case that you should be driving for someone next and convince someone to hire you for next season. But compared to everybody else, Joey Brown's got it very, very nice. There are a lot of drivers that would love to be in his position.
Well, and it brings us back to a couple years ago with Colin Keister winning his championship in this series a year ago. You think of Isaac Gann a couple of years back. There's always that one driver that is just able to impress above all others in this series, and they are the ones that all of these teams want to go after, the new up-and-coming talent. And Joey Brown's not new to this. He's going to be new to a lot of team owners because he was in the series before we had this team system. But Joey Brown has been impressive, and I'm telling you, with his performances that he's been putting on in the series, that is going to pay dividends when he looks to go to the Coke Series, and there's going to be some team owners that end up calling him in our free agency period.
I suspect his phone will be a little bit busy. There's also Vicente Salas out of Temecula, California, who will be looking for a return to the Coke Series, and maybe just given that his car and his shirt is all done up in Williams colors, maybe his phone's not quite so busy compared to some of the other folks. I think we know where he would like to keep his partnerships. If all things can line up going into 2023. But got the win at Richmond, was in the playoffs in the Coke Series in 2021. Didn't quite have the campaign he wanted this time around, but we're seeing lots of talent from the young Southern Californian, and he looks to be a fixture on the oval side of iRacing for many seasons to come as we turn to another driver who not all that old, and yet Taylor Burris. I feel like we've seen Thunder Dan running on the sim for so many seasons, still fighting for his first ever berth in the Coke Series. But when you talk about drivers with experience, Cam's name definitely comes to mind.
It certainly does, and he is one of those drivers who is right there on the bubble trying to see if he can get his way into the class of 2023 for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Has a lot of work to do, but he's in a little bit of that bubble zone where if one good move can cost him the chance to maybe make it, and also one bad move could eliminate him from the opportunity to move on. So he's got a lot of work to do, but still running in a decent position inside the top 10, so we'll see if he can be able to improve upon that as this run progresses.
And speaking of the bubble and that edge in the top 20, if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, as we see Colin Keister get the fence in the middle of 1 and 2 just a little bit there. They're the live point standings, so that's the bubble as it stands. It is very tense, very tight, very close, very, very intriguing from Michael Cozy Jr. and Seth the Merchant, teammates incidentally, who sit on the right and the wrong side of the bubble, respectively. Blake McCandless.
Well, you have 4 drivers that are all within 1 point of each other. I mean, that is a ridiculously tight bubble, and large part, you got to give credit to Malik Ray right now. That one car, he started 32nd. He was in 24th on lap 2. So Malik Ray did an incredible job to try. He didn't start that well, but he has raced his way forward at a track that is very difficult to do that, particularly early on in the run. But it's going to be interesting right here. We see a lot of Logitech Altus Esports cars out here this season, and boy, wouldn't that be something that if they tie to get into the top 20, I mean, that would be something to see.
And here's a good look at Malik Ray, who is one of the hardest chargers in this race up to this point, currently scored in the 22nd position. And Malik is just doing what it seems like he does every year. Doesn't necessarily always have the best of luck in the Coke Series. For whatever reason, finds himself down in the Contender Series and has done that consistently for the last few years. But when it really truly matters, Taylor Burris, Malik always has found a way to dig deep, get the results he needs to come back into the Coke Series for the following season. It's not the first time that he's followed this path, and if that start that Blake talked about is any indication, it looks like Malik's going to put forward yet another effort to try and lock himself in to the Coke Series for 2023.
And he's always been able to do that. He's able to withstand the pressure of this competition here. The Contender Series probably is one of the most competitive series that we have in this ladder system for the eNASCAR here on iRacing, where drivers have to be so careful with making one bad move could put you in this predicament and be able to fight your way through, because you're dealing with the new up-and-coming talent as we see some action happening here on the track.
Take a look here. This is Blade Witt and Andrew Navarro racing through turns 3 and 4 just a little bit ago, and contact there. Witt, don't know whether or not he came up or Navarro came down, but Navarro got the worst of that and landed in the fence, and Navarro currently scored in the 29th position. Witt actually back to 32nd at this stage. So they've already had a bit of an adventure of their own as Malik Ray continues to try and work over Tyler Gary, who's got some rear end damage. You can see it on your screens there from that lap 1 incident that Blake talked about. Here goes Ray to the inside of Gary to try and get the 21st position.
He's going to try to do that. It was Derek Bordeaux that kind of got the opposite end of that of Tyler Gary. He had to pit to take off tape, which we've seen that time and time again. Any little bit of nose damage really hurts these race cars. As we see Blaze Crawford right here. Thought that he was kind of on a resurgence here, at least last week. Had a very good run, but did not make a qualifying time, and that's just so difficult. I didn't do that at this race last year either, and I can just say making up that track position is just so difficult to try and get done once you lose. I mean, think of Dylan Alt right now. Dylan Alt started 37th in this race. He's 28th. He won and dominated this race a year ago. And here he is back in 28th. Getting that track position and being able to qualify is so important to having a good run in this series.
It's been a struggle for Blaze Crawford all night. It's 36 on the board right now after starting 38th. Meanwhile, Tucker Minter, quite the opposite story, running in the third spot, trying to work over Vicente Salas for the runner-up position. And if you want more information about the world of eNASCAR, take out your mobile device and take a picture of the QR code on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen and sign up at the link that will take you to today for all the information from eNASCAR, courtesy of iRacing, the official simulation partner of NASCAR. Also of note, one more race. We saw the D-Box eNASCAR International iRacing Series powered by Digital Motorsports at Circuit Zolder just a little bit earlier this evening. One more race for them, and it happens to be right here at the virtual Darlington Raceway. That race will come to you 1 week from tonight, December 20th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2300 or 11 p.m. GMT for those watching in Europe. And you can see all the broadcasts of the D-Box eNASCAR International iRacing Series powered by Digital Motorsports on eNASCAR.com/live. You can visit the eNASCAR.com website for more information. And that race will also precede the season finale for the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series coming up next week from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't had the chance, you can head to iRacing.com/holiday-sale to get 25% off of iRacing account renewals in 12 and 24 months now through December 16th. So you have a few more days this week to take advantage of that deal, and 50% off of new memberships to iRacing from now until January 8th. Once again, you can head to iRacing.com/holiday-sale to take advantage of those offers today. We return to the racing action, and it is Alan Bowes and Parker White who hold the 9th and 10th positions that you see on your screen. White's had a nice little run through this pack. Blake McCandless started in 13th, currently scored in 10th, trying to get 9th for Alan Bowes.
Yeah, Parker White has just had a pretty quiet season and really had a chance to win a couple of weeks ago at Homestead in Nashville before a problem there. James, looking at this World of Outlaws game that has been released, I've seen so many people playing it. I've even tried it out myself. It is such a great experience. So I know a lot of these drivers are sliding around Darlington. Well, guess what? You could be sliding around a ton of different racing circuits and all different types of cars. I haven't talked to one person who has regretted buying that game. It has been such a great experience, and can't recommend it enough. It's been a lot of fun to play.
Well, look at that. How convenient. You see a little bit of footage from the new Lucas Oil Speedway that made it into the game as part of the latest DLC pack. You can pick up World of Outlaws Dirt Racing for Xbox One, Xbox Series X and Series S, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5 now. Good look here at some of the onboard shots that you see at Darlington Raceway. This is Alito, Texas's Caden Honeycutt, who's working to race his way back into the Coke Series. And it's a solid, if not quiet, campaign, but we hit the penultimate race, and he enters this evening 10th in points, 31 points above the cut line, and in pretty good position, Taylor Burris, to return to the Coke Series for 2023.
Going to be a busy 2023 for Caden Honeycutt, competing both if he gets a chance to compete in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, as well as in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2023. So a lot of things happening for him. It's great to see a mix of both real life and the virtual world kind of melding together for some of our drivers who are competing in this racing series here, and we look forward to seeing what he can accomplish as we ride on board. Been having a smooth line all night, just really hitting his marks, not putting a whole lot of pressure, just putting himself in the right position before his first round of pit stops.
Pit stops, we think, probably will be coming soon. If you've got drivers that are looking to maybe two-stop this race, Blake McCandless, your window is going to open relatively quickly.
Yeah, that's going to be the case. I'm watching pit road right now, James, to see if we're going to get any takers on this two-stop strategy. As you mentioned, it'd be in the next couple of laps. You'd think just before or just around lap 40, we saw Blade Witt enter pit road a couple of laps ago, as I think he was going to be a part of that strategy. But we saw last year when it was 2 or 3 stops, there wasn't really a particular advantage for really either run. I would say that they both ended up about even. As oh man, a big slide there from Ray Alfalla. Close quarters between Wyatt Tinsley and Briar LaPrade. And Ray Alfalla has made up a couple of positions up here into 16th, but I think he said it best, James. Ray has to pretty much win these next 2 weeks to have a chance at making it, and even then, so I think he may need some help in regards to the points. So Ray, I think at this point, is just all in, and Briar LaPrade just behind him in a much more I guess desperate situation in terms of being right around that cut line. He was the cut line coming into this race and running 17th, probably doing himself just enough to the good to be close to it.
He's not hurting his case, but he's not exactly helping his case all that much.
Yeah.
He's sort of, I would say, proverbially kicking the can down the road, and he'll have to try and figure it out at Texas next week as you see him duck to the inside of Ray Alfalla. LaPrade came into tonight 4 points outside of 20th. He was 21st in points when the green flag dropped. But Ray Alfalla, 33rd in points, 38 points behind. Taylor Burris, we've never had a season in which Ray Alfalla has not been a part of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series or any of its predecessors. And we are staring at the very real possibility now that we may not have Ray Alfalla in the Coke Series for 2023. And that is a massive story that could unfold when you consider that Ray not only has the longevity, but he's got the 4 series titles. He is the most decorated driver in the history of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And we may not see him back in the series next year at this rate. He has to have great performances over the next 2 weekends to even have a shot at making it back.
He certainly did, and having him have his slide right there out of turn number 4 showcases that he is absolutely driving his heart out and really racing hard with Briar LaPrade. There you see, of course, the veteran versus the up-and-coming future stars of this sport, as we see LaPrade get to that inside. But to that point, I mean, Ray Alfalla is basically, I have to say it, put in the simplest way, our Jimmy Johnson of the eNASCAR brand. Most wins, most championships. He has all the records pretty much covered in when it comes to the eNASCAR series. So to have him not be able to return possibly in 2023, it's something of almost ending of an era.
If we had an eNASCAR Hall of Fame, he would be one of the first inductees. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But Blake, that's also part of what this Contender Series does. We've seen a lot of drivers in the past few years who have multiple years of experience in the top series as they bounce off of each other there. And Alfalla, I think, got the fence just a bit. That was Malik Ray who threw the shoulders up and hit check a few people.
Alfalla has spun out. Caution is out for the first time since Homestead Miami Speedway as Ray Alfalla continued his spin. He drifted around after making contact with the wall, could not collect that race car, and Ray Alfalla spins just as we were starting to get into that pit cycle, James.
We'll take a look at the replay momentarily, but Ray Alfalla, who needed everything but this to happen. This is almost worst case scenario. He'll have some repairs that he can do if he wants. The car from first glance still seems drivable, but this is exactly what you did not want to have happen if you were Ray Alfalla, Taylor Burris.
No, this certainly is not the case here. And he started struggling a little bit on the previous lap, but here you got a bad exit off turn number 2. His teammates go to his inside, and then just a little bit of beating and banging right there. 3 wide as they work through the middle of the corner, and as he looked to the inside, the car just looped around him. There was no contact. It was just him pushing to the absolute limit, and he just crossed over that line a little too far.
So there were a few factors, I think, that were involved in that. First, I misspoke. It looked like it was Wyatt Tinsley who got to the back of Brandon McKissick. And then it almost looked like Alfalla tried to duck underneath Tinsley and just got loose. I wonder if that's old tires or something else in the car, but Alfalo loops it around. Meanwhile, Cody Bias takes the field to pit road, and as he comes down pit road, we will step aside and be back with more coverage on the other side of this break as iRacing brings you continued coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series for the virtual Darlington Raceway. Back at the virtual Darlington Raceway for continued coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. As you see, some cars who have made some quick stops on pit road and made things happen. Tucker Minter with a really, really quick stop. As reminds you that you can pick up a 25% off renewal and reactivation of your iRacing account for 12 and 24 months now through December 16th, and 50% off of all new memberships now through January 8th when you head to iRacing.com/holiday-sale as part of the iRacing holiday sale. You saw a little bit there during the break of Ray Alfalo sitting on pit road, and to the point that I was trying to make before all of that broke out, Blake McCandless, that the Contender Series has had a process of sort of weeding things out, in a sense. Over the past few years in particular, we've seen a lot of drivers who had been longtime stalwarts of the Coke Series end up getting shuffled out of consideration and fall out of the top 20 of the Contender Series and fall out of the system altogether because new drivers come in and they jump on the service. They get inspired by some of the drivers who've been running the Coke Series. They practice, they find their way to Contender, and then they're just faster and they take their spot. It's almost sort of a, I hate to say natural circle of life sort of thing, but it has that sort of effect, and maybe this is the year in which Ray falls victim to that process. Who knows?
Well, and that's the thing, James. The one thing that is constant in life is change, and that's one thing that this Contender Series just does. The competition now, there are so many drivers, James. You think about 10 years ago, the amount of drivers who can work their way up through the iRacing ranks and can compete at this level is just higher than it's ever been before. And that's really the only reason why we have a scenario where the greatest driver that we've had in this esport for as long as it's been around is finding himself on the outside looking in just purely off of competitiveness. Of course, hasn't had a lot of luck here in this series, but that's just the changing of the tide, James, is that it has just gotten so competitive. There are so many high-level capable drivers now that you have to be on your toes every single year to keep your spot.
Tucker Minter going to lead this field back to Green Flag Racing, coming to lap 49 of 120, about 10 to 15 laps shy of the halfway marker here at Darlington Raceway in the sixth round of 7 of the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series. Minter leads us back to green. Bias and Salas continue to go, and Seth the Merchant has made his way back up into the top 5.
Yeah, really great run for Seth the Merchant here as he holds that top 5. Watching on the competitors as they work their way through the circuit.
Lots of battles further back as these drivers try and sort themselves out, especially from about 10th on back. Really good fight here just a little bit further back of Vicente Salas between Michael Cozy, Parker White, Caden Honeycutt, Derek Justice. That's all right on the edge of the top 10 as you get a good look at our driver in P4, Vicente Salas. You can see it just on the edge of your screen there as they come down the back straightaway. But they're still door-to-door for position, and now looks like here goes Joey Brown working to the outside of Seth the Merchant for a spot.
And that's one thing that Joey Brown has really been able to showcase, at least in 3 and 4, James, is that he's able to find a lot of speed up on the top end of the racetrack. He's gone to the bottom, and he's been able to make that end work, but has really done a good job of finding a lot of speed in 3 and 4. And we're seeing a lot more drivers, James, that I thought we would see who are running the bottom of 3 and 4. We're not quite seeing what we saw even last year when I was in this race, a majority of the field running the outside in 3 and 4. Most of the field has migrated their way down to the bottom, and they've stayed there for most of the race. So I can't say that I was expecting that, but it's been an interesting development here in this race with these Xfinity cars.
As we settle into this green flag run, let's take a moment to highlight all the great sounds at the virtual Darlington Raceway as we go iRacing full throttle. Lots of action here. I still don't feel like we've seen everybody just find their place, as it were, as we normally see the green flag runs at Darlington, but a few side-by-side battles that we're keeping track of over the course of tonight's race here at Darlington. And a lack of movement as well, save for Jordy Lopez Jr. I think we have to give a shout-out to no one has done a better job charging through this field. As you see Daniel Smallwood on your screens fighting for the 28th spot with Brandon McKissick, but Lopez all the way up to the 15th position. However, looks like he missed his box last time on pit road, so that might explain why he's got the good track position, Blake Michaelis, because he's also got tires older than everybody else.
Well, and that's one thing we haven't really had in this series, James. We haven't had pit cycles that take place under caution. Again, as mentioned earlier, we had one yellow flag coming into tonight in the entire series throughout the entire schedule. So every single pit stop these drivers have been making have been green flag pit stops. So I'm sure they're used to going down pit road, and they can see everything down there. They have as many stalls to drive in, and visually it's been really easy. So have to get back into the swing of things, and even driving on pit road, James, even at this level is different because everybody's so precise, everybody's so good that even getting that practice just making time up on pit road, entering your stall, exiting your stall. Those are things that even at this level is different than just about anywhere else you can get on the service.
Good look at Wyatt Tinsley out of Hampton, Virginia, and making lots of moves on the racetrack all season has Tinsley, but struggling for track position right now. Had that incident there where got caught up with Brandon McKissick right before Ray Alfala spun, back in the 30th position. Meanwhile, Ryan Doucette a little bit further up the running order. How about third for the driver out of Framingham, Massachusetts, who has former experience in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and Taylor Burris is trying to race his way back into the Coke Series for next season.
And he's doing that just by running where he is inside the top 3, having a quiet night. He's about a second back from his next competitor, which is Cody Bias, as they work through and continuing on, but holding a strong run, holding off Vicente Salas as well. Really good run for him tonight.
Tucker Minter, your leaders. We just now have crossed the halfway point in tonight's event from the virtual Darlington Raceway for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And everybody in the top 5 or so really well spread out. A little bit more bunched up further back in the field as we go to 31st. This is where James Winslow is out of Burlington, Wisconsin, and with a little bit of work to do to try and go catch Tinsley and Colin Keister, who Tinsley is racing for position.
And Winslow had a little bit of a struggle here in this Contender Series, but you know, it's one thing to even get to this level, James, to go through round 1 in the trucks, to go through round 2 and to be able to qualify here. And it's enough to get to this level, and unfortunately, James probably not in a position where he's going to transfer into the Coke Series or be eligible for a Coke Series license next year. But there's still a lot you can learn in these last couple of races and being able to prepare and try to carry some momentum into next season and start that. And right there, James, you can see right there, shutting. He's clutching that car right there. He didn't quite shut the motor off, but he's clutching and trying to save a little bit of fuel here. So I wonder if that's just him or if it's going to be another couple of Altus Esports cars that we may see trying to do the same thing.
That was pretty obvious on the RPM gauge. We'll take a listen here on the back straightaway and see just what he does. He was full throttle in 1 and 2. Let's see what happens as we enter turn 3. And you can see it there. The RPM gauge goes back down to 2,000 and then back up to 6 for a little bit. So he is clutching in turn 3 to try and save a little bit of fuel. And that, to me, Taylor Burris, is the Hail Mary strategy play we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast for him. Winslow, Blake mentioned it, 34th in points entering this evening, 39 points out of the cutoff line. He needs to try anything for a good finish. So how about clutching fuel and seeing if you can't stay out while everybody else comes down pit road one more time to pick up some positions. It's a strategy you can at least try, and if you're in Winslow's spot, there's not really much more you have to lose, so why not?
It's a doable strategy. I mean, these cars can run out for quite a good bit of time. I don't know about 60 laps per se, but it is going to be an interesting strategy to see what they can do. They got a little bit of work to do, but he has been showcasing just that little bit of clutching can help save a few extra gallons possibly over a course of a run. So we'll see how much he's able to save here and see if he's going to be one of those late pit stoppers towards the end of this race.
Or if he'll come down pit road at all, I think, is the bigger question. As we look at this battle for 4th and 5th, this is Vicente Salas and Joey Brown. Salas, I've talked to him in the past, and he really does like racing here at Darlington. He loves the challenge of this track. He thinks it's a track that suits the way he drives very well, where it almost forces you to be a little bit aggressive, but you've got Joey Brown hot on your heels, and with the way this season has gone, if you've got Joey Brown anywhere near you, you're going to have to pick up the pace just a little bit as Brown completes the pass to the inside and goes to 4th. Taylor.
Yeah, Joey Brown and Vicente Salas, 2 of the winners so far this season who have showcased a lot of talent and skill here. And then you got to throw in, of course, Seth DeMerchant, who's right there in the mix. He's been showing a couple of strong runs as they work down the back straightaway. They'll go side by side into turns 3 and 4. But Joey Brown, I have to say, is going to be that one driver everyone's going to have to watch going into the 2023 season, along with Vicente Salas as well. He still has a lot to prove, but I know he's for a fact he's going to be one of those drivers who can compete for a championship in the near future.
Just a little bit further back of Vicente Salas, we talked about it earlier with the throwback American Airlines paint scheme. Parker White. There's a little bit more to that, because if you look at his onboard in his rig on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, Blake McCandless, that is not another wheel that he has in the other desk. That is a yoke for a flight simulator. So this is a man who I think virtually likes to take to the track and to the skies as well.
You know, that's one thing being around this community, James, that it's not just Parker. I know a lot of folks who really take an interest in both. I don't know why. There's just this interesting crossover between sim racing and flight sims, and granted, it's operating a vehicle in a simulation. There's some type of similarity there that there's just a lot of crossover, and Parker White, again, not the first person that I've seen that takes interest in flight sim that's a part of the sim racing community as well. But whatever it does for Parker, you can't really question it. I mean, he's had great success here in the sim world, so who knows, maybe flying from RDU to anywhere in New York or something. I don't know. Maybe it relieves the stress. I don't know. But for Parker White, it certainly works out.
The problem is that if he's a mainer, then he's probably flying out of Portland, I would think. Maybe not RDU. Yeah. I see where the hometown bias comes in.
Yeah, there we go.
But also a reminder that if you happen to be watching on twitch.tv/iRacing or twitch.tv/NASCAR, we are taking questions in the chat. So if you've got something that you may want to throw our way over the course of these final 48 laps, go ahead and type it in and send it on, and we may be able to touch on it during the broadcast as you look at this battle for 12th between Casey Tucker and Jordy Lopez Jr., Timmy Holmes and Brian LaPrade also in the mix. And Casey Tucker with a big fight on his hands alongside LaPrade. Those two right on the edge of the bubble, and really, really going to be nervous, I think, almost no matter what happens here, Taylor, come next week in Texas.
Oh, they certainly are. Those drivers are definitely going to be hanging on the edge of their seat, trying to determine when they might have that opportunity, that breakthrough moment, and also possibly looking back, what were some of the other things maybe that they could be able to do in order to make it in. And unfortunately for some of them, this is going to be that case for these drivers towards the back half of the field.
Timmy Holmes also part of that bunch. He's breathing a little bit easier. He was 14 points above the cutoff line, and you can see him there. The first driver on our graphic on the right-hand portion of your screen. That's the look at the bubble right there around the 20th position. Now, it is worth noting, as you get a good look at Malik Ray and Michael Cozy Jr., these two both on the good and the bad side of the bubble as it stands. But once the season finishes, all these points are all unofficial, and iRacing has to then go through and verify the results as well. So it is not an automatic, if you end up 20th on the score sheet, then you're good. But lots of drivers fighting to be the top 20, and if you're in the top 20, then there's a high likelihood that you will be eligible for an invitation into the Coke Series for the following season, Blake.
That would be the case, and again, we'll just continue to see this cut line, and I know we're going to be paying attention a lot to it for the rest of the night tonight with just 44 laps to go. We still have a green flag pit cycle, and of course next week at Texas, a lot of the top, I don't know, I'd say 14 or 15 will secure their place in the standings, and we'll be watching that cut line to see, I don't know, about the 6 or 7 drivers that will try to shake that up, but golly, that cut line, it's so close every single year, James. And when you think about how many of these drivers, some of them went through an entire Coke Series season, some of them went through 15 races in the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series down in the trucks, and to have all of that come down to just one race next week, I can tell you there's so much pressure, and the preparation for that would likely start tonight, right after this race is over. So a lot weighing on that race next week for what could be about 6 or 7 if these results should stand.
We mentioned that we may have a few questions off of Twitch. And Taylor Burris, you've been monitoring the Twitch chat over the course of the evening. It seems like you may have found something for us.
Yeah, we got our first question here from JRAJCOK, who has the question, who's been the biggest surprise this season, both good and bad? And Blake, I guess we'll start off with you. What's your thoughts on this matter?
Most surprising, I have to say, has been Wyatt Tinsley, far and away. It's been so impressive, the speed that he's brought to this series, that he runs 6th in the standings right now. I know he's 25th tonight, so tonight hasn't exactly gone his way for the NFR driver, but I have to say this consistency that he's showcased in the first 5 races is something that I may not have seen coming, but Wyatt Tinsley has been so impressive, and even with a 25th place run tonight, he has certainly been at the top of the board in terms of drivers that have really kind of outperformed, I think, what perhaps maybe they even thought had coming in. And as far as a surprise in the bad sense, I mean, I think we chronicled it earlier tonight, Ray Alfala, who is out of the race right now. So Alfala has parked it, and with that, he will not be in the Coke Series next season. I think that has to come as big of a shock as any, James.
You know, I was chatting with Justin Melillo, esteemed reporter on eNASCAR last week, about the possibility of Ray not being in, and I said, you know, it's really hard for me to even wrap my head around being around the community as long as I've had, because Ray's been there every single year, and it's looking increasingly likely that that's not the case. Meanwhile, if I am going to throw in my 2 cents on Taylor's question, I think Wyatt Tinsley and his teammate at North Sports Racing, Parker White, get it on. I also think I'm surprised to see it come together as well as it has for Altus in a few senses. Jordi Lopez Jr. I figured would be top 20. I didn't think he'd be coming into tonight second in points, but we talk about consistency being the key above all in this series. He has shown it as well as anybody has in this campaign. And Tucker Minter as well. I think the maturation of Tucker over the last few years on the sim, he came into the oval side of iRacing as a driver who had a reputation for being extremely aggressive and not afraid to go in on things as Seth the Merchant comes down pit road. And it sometimes ended up biting him, and he had to figure out how to control that aggression to just become purely quick. He's found a way to do that. He's currently 7th in points entering this evening, and looking like we will likely see him in the Coke Series next year as more drivers come down pit road for service. Taylor Burris.
Yeah, more drivers are making their way down, and such as Joey Brown, Cody Bias, Parker White, and Caden Honeycutt. So pretty much all of the drivers inside the top 10 have made their way down in for their final round of pit stops. For me, the driver who has been the biggest surprise for me has to go to Derek Justice, as we see the 10 of Tucker Minter, your race leader, enter down pit road. But Derek Justice, if you think about it, didn't have the best run in 2022 for the eNASCAR series, but has made a major stamp on coming in here for the Contender series and showcasing a lot of speed here tonight. That's who I have to say has been the biggest surprise this season.
More drivers down on pit road for service. You see Ryan Doucette entering pit lane. Derek Justice, who Taylor Burris was just talking about. Daniel Falkingham also on pit road for service. Is Vicente Salas now making his way down onto pit road. And Blake McCandless, you know as well as anybody, as you see, that
man,
was so close for Vicente Salas. He just about hit the barriers there as looks like Briar LaPrade comes in behind him. But this is one of the toughest pit road entrances. And it's almost unfair to the drivers that you have Dover and Darlington in back-to-back weeks, because those two tracks are, for my money, 2 of the 3 most difficult pit entries that we have in all of the oval side of iRacing.
I was about to say it's almost unfair to have them back-to-back, and what makes Darlington so difficult is there's so many different ways to approach pit road. You can kind of duck out as early as the entry of turn 3. You can duck down kind of in the middle of 3 and 4. There's so many different ways to get it done. So I think that's what makes Darlington so difficult. There's so many different ways to approach it, depending on traffic, depending on where you are in your pit cycle. But my goodness, I mean, Vicente Salas, you talk about a game of inches. He was just mere inches away from making contact with those barrels, and Again, having a good run go up in smoke. Well, we're going to watch it one more time, and I advise you to look at the amount of space between that right front fender and the barrels, because it is not a lot of space. We'll see it right here, and a slide, and oh man, I mean, again, so close to having a catastrophic end to his race right there.
For those who pay attention to iRacing community member Mr. Arrow HD's streams, that's drifting that I think even he would appreciate coming down on pit road. As you get a good look here at Alan Bowes, Tucker Minter, Taylor Hurst, and Joey Brown, all fighting for position on the racetrack. Bowes, though, your race leader, but he, along with the rest of the top 9, yet to come down pit road. Taylor Burris.
Yeah, certainly is the case here, and a lot of drivers working their way through. My surprise, of course, once again, is Derek Justice in that number 31. Showed a lot of great speed during these Contender series compared to what we saw in the eNASCAR series, but that 31 machine has been able to work his way up through the field. I know right now he's a lap down in 23rd after the pit stop cycle, but really that run that he had at Homestead, absolutely phenomenal and definitely worth a shot to make his way back possibly into the eNASCAR Coke Series.
There's the look at, I guess, Blake, we can call him iRacing's, at least the Oval community's most esteemed and acclaimed bowling fanatic as well. But Derek Justice out of Elizabethtown, Kentucky, looking to pull sort of a Malik Ray-esque run back into the Coke Series, where it did not go his way in the Coke Series in 2022. But here he is again, putting in the performances that he needs to get back to the Coke Series and maybe change his fortunes and learn something a little bit with more experience with the next-gen car under his belt next season.
Well, I would say Derek Justice, I was racing against him 11 years ago, and one thing that Derek's always thrived off of is confidence, and I think he's so comfortable with these Xfinity Series cars, he's able to build up that confidence and kind of ride a wave of momentum through this Contender Series, and he's just had bad starts to his Coke Series seasons each of the last couple of years, and I think that just, puts him in a bad spot, and he's just never quite been able to recover from that. But it's been the opposite in this Contender Series. He starts great, and he's able to ride that through. So can he kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together here, getting back into the Coke Series, I would presume, in 2023?
If you look on your screens, you look at the right side, that right rear in particular of Taylor Hurst Chevrolet Camaro. A little bit of damage for the driver out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who came into tonight 56 points outside of the cutoff line. And after 2 seasons of consecutive competition in the Coke Series, Taylor Burris, we'll need to see something wild out of Taylor Hurst if he is going to be back in the Coke Series for 2023 at this stage.
Yeah, this is a do-or-die moment for him if he's able to fight his way up through the field right now. He's got a tough hill to climb, given the fact of the next 2 races, and it's going to be so difficult to see here how this will work out as we ride on board with Taylor Hurst to see that instant little scrape of the wall right there. But as he works through turn 1 and 2, pretty much right there, he gets his infamous Darlington strike.
I think that's the latest we've ever gone to a broadcast here and not talked about the Darlington strike. Wild to think about, as it just hits me. But normally, yes, you see a lot of drivers because this track is so narrow. We spoke of the narrowness of the racing group earlier on. The backside of that is that if drivers get it wrong and they hit the fence, you see a Darlington stripe along the side of their cars. You see black tire marks alongside the walls, hence where the Lady in Black nickname came for this place. As we remind you that you can get 50% off of all new memberships through January 8th and 25% off of renewals or reactivations of 12 or 24 months through December 16th if you head to iracing.com/holiday-sale as Alan Bowes continues to stretch out this run on the racetrack. 25 laps to go. So if you're in this position and you're one of the top now 6 drivers that are still out there on the racetrack, Blake McCandless, if you're playing virtual crew chief, what are you trying to accomplish by staying out? What strategy are you trying to play into here?
Praying for a wreck. I think that's about the best thing you could do right here. I mean, Alan Bowes is in a relatively safe position when it comes to the points. If you're Brian Mercurio, you weren't having a run that would kind of help you at this stage. And Mercurio kind of down in the points right now, came in about 29 points beneath the cut line. I mean, he needs a prayer in this race. He needs to win and have a lot happen. So he's kind of playing his last card that's available for him. Jonathan Delaney, Christopher Hill, Andrew Navarro haven't had the seasons they've wanted, and with a caution would be in a perfect position to finish in a really good spot. But again, just the more these laps continue to knock on, and I'm pretty sure there's just no way they're going to be able to make it to the end on fuel. They're just playing the last thing that's available for them, and we'll see if they get a late race yellow. We haven't seen a lot of them in this series, but again, it's Darlington. It's a tough track to drive, and as these cycles work through and you have drivers who are on old tires and new tires, you just never know. As you take a look right there at Tyler Gary, who's in a pretty good points position coming in.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but Gary passed James Wenzel on the back straightaway, who we went on board with earlier. Remember, Wenzel was clutching the entry to turn 3. That was for position, and Wenzel's now back to 33rd and still is yet to make his stop. He's on the same strategy as Alan Bowes, now out on the racetrack for 55 laps. Kevin King out of La Mesa, California, had plenty of success in the sim and plenty of experience, and is going to have plenty of nerves, I think, to deal with on Tuesday night next week. 19th in the points entering tonight, so regardless of what happens here, it's not the greatest run, not the worst, currently 22nd, so it won't really change his picture all that much. He will want to have a good run to secure his place in the Coke Series in Texas next week.
Yeah, he certainly is going to have to do that here if he wants to make it way through as we pick up the battle for P4. And it's a gaggle of cars right there. Doucette, Parker White, Mercurio, Jonathan Dulani as well in the mix for this battle.
Everybody now, a little bit of contact there just a bit further back. That was a scary moment coming out of turn 2 for Jonathan Delaney, who is currently scored in the 7th spot, now 10th position. He, too, one of the drivers that's staying out on the racetrack trying to catch a caution, a break, like you said, Blake.
Yeah, and again, we're just kind of in that cycle right now where you can see a lot of drivers who are staying out on their old tires, just causing... I wouldn't say they're causing anything, but they're just playing the last option that they have available for them as they're getting passed now for position. You'd imagine that they're going to pit here in short order, but it's made it difficult, and we've had a couple of instances between some drivers who are on those old tires that are nearly a second and a half, 2 seconds back, or slower on pace, as we see another gaggle right here. They're 3 wide into turn 1. Andrew Navarro, he's on old tires in the middle of the racetrack, and boy, they are just this is when those cautions can happen, and you just have to be really careful if you're on these fresh tires. You do not want to make a mistake, and you see Lopez is able to just get clear of Navarro. Derek Justice will follow suit.
These are the terrifying moments because you've got the drivers on old tires versus the drivers on new tires, and you have two very different paces, such as the fall-off that you see with these folks. It was a solid second that Tucker Minter had on Alan Bowes last time by in terms of lap times, just for what it's worth. So when you're traveling a literal second faster around the racetrack than some of these drivers on old tires, those differences in braking points and in gaps and in measuring draw distances and speeds, it can get tricky, and you can end up with that yellow that Alan Bowes and Jonathan Delaney are looking for. Those two, along with Brian Mercurio and Colin Keister, and then Blaze Crawford and Brendan Kohler, I think, and James Wenzel, those are the only drivers that have elected to stay out. Everybody else came down pit road about 20 laps ago.
All about that strategy call and trying to see what they can do. For some drivers like Colin Keister, it's definitely not working out for them. Of course, he has that win, of course, from Dover last week. But, of course, Alan Bowes just putting along. I mean, he has a 7-second lead over Tucker Minter, and he's just biding this time, taking care of his equipment, not really wanting to push the envelope here, while everyone else is just trying to go all out. And they got to be careful not to make that mistake that could cost them.
The problem for Alan Bowes is that it was a 7-second lead the last time he came down past the start-finish line. It is now a 6.4 second lead. So Tucker Minter is gaining, no doubt about that. The question, though, will be how does the closing rate change as Minter's tires age? stretch. It was a more significant gap between lap times earlier in the run. That gap shrinks as the run goes on. So can Minter make this happen over the course of the next 14 laps? He needs somewhere in the ballpark of just under half a second per lap in order to be able to make it to Alan Bowes by the time we hit the checkered flag, unless Bowes decides to come down pit road.
Well, again, that advantage will start to go away for Alan Bowes, and he has a couple of lap cars up the road. There's only one in front of Tucker Minter right now. But I would say it's one thing to catch him, it's another thing to pass him here, James. I think we were covering a Road to Pro race about 2 years ago, and Derek Justice was kind of in the same scenario as Tucker Minter right now. Had way fresher tires and was running down the leader, and then he got to him, and he spent about 25 laps trying to pass that truck, and he just wasn't able to do it. It's just one of those things where having that track position is so very important. I don't know if Minter, he may be able to catch Alan Bowes, but as we've seen here at Darlington, it's very difficult to make that pass, even if you're just a little bit faster than those cars in front of you. So we'll see if Minter is able to get it done. He's still about half a second faster, but that advantage may fade by the time he catches him with maybe 6 or 7 laps to go, at least by my calculations right now.
That gap is now down to 4.2 seconds as you see Daniel Buttafuoco racing for the 18th position on the racetrack. All of these cars trying to clear Jonathan Delaney, who has still stayed out. That's Boyd Hogan and Briar LaPrade in front of and just behind Buttafuoco respectively. As Buttafuoco goes to the inside of Hogan, this would be for the 17th position if he can complete the pass, but Hogan gets that good run on the outside of 1 and 2, so he will keep Buttafuoco behind him for the moment.
Yeah, keeping an eye on this right here between Daniel Buttafuoco, who I have to say has to be one of the surprise drivers who we were expecting to showcase a lot of speed and a lot of pace during this Contender series. He has some glimmers here and there, but really not what we were expecting compared to what we saw in the qualifying series as well as also in the college series that happened earlier this year. So interesting to see what he can maybe try to do to make some better adjustments to be ready for possibly coming back in 2023.
Will be tight here, but Buttafuoco could definitely use a few more positions to help his case. The problem is that he's got a little bit of work to do to go chase down Colin Bowden for 16th. As we now return our attention to the race lead, Bowes clear of Tucker Minter by 2.2 seconds. It's been about 6 or 7 tenths per lap, if not more than that, over the last 5 or 6. So it seems more and more likely that Tucker Minter will at least get to the rear bumper of Alan Bowes. And then from that point, it'll be about what defense Alan Bowes can play from the race lead to try and secure the victory, or can Minter pass him and pick up what would arguably be the biggest victory of Minter's sim racing career up to this point.
And what a way it would be to win and to pretty much secure your way into the top 20 in points if Tucker Minter were to be able to hang on. It would be a very, very great run for Tucker Minter. As we're going to listen here to Alan Bowes. And you could see, James, once again, we caught James Winsell doing it. We caught Alan Bowes doing it a little bit. Is he clutching to save? Let's take a listen. Yep, yeah, you see it right there. And one thing that Bowes is doing that Winsell was not doing, look how long he is holding it out. He is trying to save a ton of fuel, and he is clutching right where I was doing at that Boeing sign on the back straightaway. So Bowes is trying to save a ton of fuel. I'm sure that's why the gap has shrunk, and even if you're Alan Bowes and some of the drivers that are on his pit box, I'm sure Blake Reynolds, Sean Butler, a couple of others, they're telling him, hey, we may not need to win this race. We're in a good position. So Tucker Minter getting bigger in your rearview mirror with 6 to go. I know you'd love to win, but we need to make it to the end more than we need to win this race. So Alan Bowes, you could see trying to save all he can, and that's going to set up a battle for the lead here into turn 1.
And Bowes, unlike James Winsell, was clutching on the entry to 1 and 2 as well, not just the entry to 3 and 4 as Winsell was doing earlier. So Tucker Minter will catch Bowes. This may end up just being one of those patented good points nights for Alan Bowes to get himself back into the Coke Series as Minter goes to the inside and completes the pass with these. And it is now Warrington, Virginia's Tucker Minter to the front at Darlington with 5 laps to go.
A great strategy call, of course, right there for Alan Bowes. We'll see if it'll be able to play out for him as we get close to the end of this race. But for Tucker Minter, we talked about him. He was one of those drivers who we saw last year dominate, this year now working his way through, but with strategy has found his way up to the front of the field here. But he's got to still worry about Joey Browns, who's closing in, but might not have enough time.
Joey Brown is the next driver who came down pit road. He has just made the pass on Alan Bowes, and he has 9/10 of a second to gain, but no tire advantage. If anything, Minter has the advantage on Brown. Minter came in a lap after Brown did, so Brown's going to have to really race, and then race a little bit more in the final 3 laps to catch Tucker Minter and make something out of this, Blake McCandless.
How is Joey Brown almost winning this race? I mean, he started 11th. We know he's been fast all day. And through the midst of that pit cycle, he's been able to gain so many spots time and time again at all of these different tracks on this pit cycle. And, I mean, he was running 7th or 8th before we started green flag pit stops, and all of a sudden he is up here in 2nd. It's just unbelievable the amount of pace that he has at every single racetrack. Even when he doesn't get the qualifying effort, it is just remarkable how fast he's been every single type of racetrack we go to. He has these Xfinity cars figured out, even if he may run out of time here in this one.
Lots of drivers waiting for positions. You see Parker White trying to work his way to the inside of Alan Bowes to pick up a position. White's had a pretty solid run as well. Get a good look at all the drivers working their way around the racetrack. White flag is out for Tucker Minter, though. And for the driver out of Virginia who started the evening 7th in points, this won't lock him in, but this will just about seal off eligibility to the Coke Series in 2023. We will most likely be seeing Tucker Minter at the top level of eNASCAR as he crosses the start-finish line and wins round number 6 of the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, the virtual Darlington Raceway, after a fabulous run in the second half of this race, buoyed by a great pit stop, but really solid pace under the green flag in the second half of tonight's event. Blake McCandless that brought home the victory for Tucker Minter and now makes it 2 drivers for Altus Esports that we suspect we'll see in the Coke Series next year.
Up to this point, he has a teammate in Michael Cozy Jr. who did himself a lot of favors with a good run tonight. A lot of drivers, James, making this cut line so close, but Tucker Minter not going to have to worry about any of that next week at Texas Motor Speedway. He will certainly be in the top 20 in the points, and again, pending eligibility, we will likely see him in the Coke Series in 2023. I got to talk to Tucker at the Coke Series Championship, and boy, was he excited to get this Contender Series started, and I think we can see exactly why. He has been so consistent, and that's what you need in this series.
I happened to catch up with him there, too, and as you take a look at the final results, he said to me that seeing the Final Four in person and seeing the championship pan out the way it did, seeing Casey Kerwin win his title and get the chance to pick up the trophy with Dale Jr. right in front of him, that it inspired him to come back to the Contender Series and perform so that he could have a shot in the Coke Series next year. It looks like he will almost certainly have that as he wins by just under 1 second over Victory One's Joey Brown. Ryan Doucette for Altus Esports makes it 2 drivers for them on the podium. Parker White, the top driver for North Force Racing this evening, in 4th. Alan Bowes and Cody Bias for Dead Zone in 5th and 6th. Vicente Salas was 7th. As you take a look at more of the drivers who had a really, really good finish, and lots of drivers who made storming runs. Jordi Lopez Jr. in 10th after starting 27th, Taylor.
Yeah, great drive for him as well. And as we look through the rest of the top 20, and rest of the top 30 as well, we saw a couple of drivers running out of fuel as they crossed the line. Andrew Navarro was one of them who ran out before the checkered flag fell. Wyatt Tinsley, not a good night for him, as we see Ray Alfala DNFing here tonight.
There's a look at your full field rundown. It is almost time to chat with your podium finishers. Tucker Minter now joins us in the booth, and we will leave him to Blake McCandless for the interview with the newest winner of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series.
Tucker Mentor, you've done it in the Road to Pro ranks, down in the trucks. You finally get to call yourself a Road to Pro Contender iRacing Series winner. How does that feel, especially doing it at a track like Darlington?
Yeah, I mean, it feels amazing. The last 2 years, I've been fortunate to spot some great drivers, and I was, every time I was sitting on the grid to spot, I thought, man, it'd be cool to be in this field. So to not only be in the field, but to win a race finally, I feel like we've had such good speed for almost every race this year. It's incredible.
It's been a good run for you, and you've almost certainly secured your place in the top 20 in points. So looking forward to Texas next week. What's the approach, not just for you, but your entire team? I know you have a lot of drivers who are going to be in. You have a lot of drivers on that outfit who are just around the cut line to get into the top 20. What's the approach like these next 6-7 days?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be just like any other week from a preparation standpoint. We still got to get Cozy in, Ryan in, and so obviously our focus is on getting everybody locked into the series. So it's going to be another hard week of work. I'm going to be actually taking all my stuff back home to Virginia for winter break here tomorrow and into Thursday. So that's going to make it a little more complicated. But, fortunately, my family's going to come down to North Carolina and help me take all this back.
Well, good that you'll have some helping hands and not a whole lot of stress with it. Tucker, congratulations on your victory tonight. Well done. And we will catch up with Taylor Burris, who is with a very familiar face these last couple of weeks, Joey Brown.
Here we are with the Victory One driver of Joey Brown coming home in P2. Joey, walk us through tonight. If you feel like you had a couple of extra laps, did you have anything for Tucker?
No, I don't. Tucker was flying that whole race. I don't think anyone had anything for him. I think we got about what we could there. I don't think we could have had anything for Tucker there. But man, we were pretty quick there. It was real hard to pass. I caught a couple people sleeping. I think there got some free passes there on the outside through three and four that first stint, and then ended up kind of building a little loose that first run. So we made some adjustments on pits, and then that second run, it really came to life. We had so much drive off. We were flying there. And then that last run, we kind of got hung up there and some traffic. Built up. It was a little tight, so we did what we could with it. Just happy to be to P2 here. All the guys at Victory One did a great job this week. The ESE guys, they did pretty good. And it's my wife's birthday today too, so she let me race tonight, so I appreciate that. But yeah, it was a good race overall.
Well, you gotta have the saying, happy wife, happy life for you indeed here. Yeah. Of course, next week we head to a home state track for you over at the Texas Motor Speedway. What's your thoughts on that, going there to have a chance to win at your home track?
I haven't really been that great at the new pavement. I was really good at Old Texas. It was one of my favorite tracks. I was always really fast there, but just haven't really figured it out. I'm sure we'll have something really quick there. But of all the tracks, I think this season, I think that's the one I was least looking forward to.
So interesting to see for the Houston, Texas native of Joey Brown, but still a strong P2 finish as we head over to talk to Ryan Doucette. He is with Blake McCandless.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Ryan, I could say this track ended for you better this year than last year, for sure. But just kind of talk about your run tonight. I know it was a really great run for you here, and you put yourself in a really good spot to not have to worry about too much at Texas next week.
Yeah, it's definitely better to end this race in third place rather than wrecking with you and somebody else there winning the race. But yeah, I needed this finish so bad. I know I was entering this race really close to the cut line, and it was just going to be a really stressful last week if I didn't get it done here. And thank God the Altus guys pulled through. The setup was great. Everybody raced me clean. The race went smooth. Brought it home P3, and now as long as I finish next week at Texas, hopefully I should be in the Coke Series again.
I want to ask you about this past year because it's one thing you've already been in the Coke Series before. You were in it 2 years ago, but you take this entire year, you're back down in the trucks, you're back down in the Contender Series. I remember Colin Keister did it a couple of years ago. What's been the different approach, or have you learned anything kind of having to go and hit the reset button and kind of walk your way back up the ladder again?
I mean, each car is its own different animal, but I took a much more casual approach to Road to this season. I was like, if I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't. I made it to Contender, and I started taking it a little bit more seriously, and just I haven't had the speed that I had the first time around, I feel like, at least compared to my teammates. Every week I seem to be in the bottom half of us in the spreadsheet times, but just clean races like that are what you need to make it happen.
Certainly so, Ryan. Well, again, congratulations on your P3 tonight. And James Pike, I would say more than likely we would see the winner of this previous year's Rockingham 508 in the Coke Series in 2023.
All stories we will find out answers to next Tuesday night, the finale of the 2022 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. Our broadcast begins next Tuesday, December 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We will find out which drivers end up in the top 20 in points and end up making up the half of the field that we don't know yet. That will be in the 2023 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. For our team at iRacing and for my colleagues in the booth, Blake McCandless and Taylor Burris, I am James Pike. Thank you so much for watching iRacing's coverage of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from the virtual Darlington Raceway, and we will see you at eNASCAR.com/live next Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for the season finale from Texas.